Hi guys, in this video we are going to be building this fintech mobile application in Figma, and we are going to be using this to master the use of auto layouts and components. We are going to be talking about the different sizing properties, auto layout, suggest auto layout, component and component properties such as the instance swap, the text properties, the boolean properties, and we are also going to be looking at how to generally lay out objects on your mobile application. So if these are concepts you're interested in, do stick around, and without further ado, let's get started. So guys, to get started with this tutorial, as you can see on the top left corner, I already renamed this file to a fintech application. So the first thing we are going to do is to bring in a frame. You're going to notice that the toolbar is now at the bottom of our page. I'm just going to select this frame, and I'm going to pick from this frame. I usually used to use the iPhone 13 mini, but for this design, I'm going to be using the iPhone 14 and 15 Pro. So I'm going to select this, and the reason why I'm going to be selecting this is because if we go to the assets panel, you can see the new UI kit that Figma introduced as they rolled out this new feature, which we are going to be talking about in a bit. But the reason why I picked the iPhone 14 and 15 Pro is because I noticed some of the elements and components in the iOS 18 kits that Figma have in their application uses the iPhone 14 and 15 Pro. So I want to keep those elements consistent so we don't have to be resizing those components once we bring them into our canvas. So I'm going to go back to the file, and of course the first thing we need to bring in is the status bar. So I'm going to switch to the assets, and I'm going to search for status bar. Well, of course it's going to bring out all the status bar, top bar, bottom navigation bar for us, and I want to be really specific because I want the ones from the iOS kit. So I'm going to hit this X button here, and I'm going to select the iOS 18 kit, and then I'm going to search for status bar. So it's going to give us the status bar just for the iOS sections. So I'm going to search for, I think I'm going to pick this at the top here, and I'm going to insert this into our page. I'm going to switch back to the file, and as you can see on hitting on these components of the status bar, you can see that the width is 393, which is similar to the same width as the iPhone 14 and 15 Pro. So I'm going to select this status bar and shove it at the top of our application. So for the app, I'm going to change the title of this screen to home screen. You can change it to whatever title you want. So the next thing we are going to do is to start designing our home screen. So the first thing I want to do is to have like a greeting at the top here. I don't know what they have in the Cash app. I think it's money, but here I'm just going to say, "Hi, John," and I'm going to change this to like a medium size. So I'm going to leave this at 16 pixel. That's for the size of the greeting. And the next thing I want to have is like a profile icon over here. So there's a few ways to do this. We can go ahead to draw out a frame in this section. And in this frame section, we can go to fill and switch in fill to images and try to bring in an image for the avatar. And then go ahead to round up the corners like 100% and make both the width and the height equal. We can now make the width like 45. And here we have a perfect circle, and we can go ahead to bring in an image. But I don't want to choose an image. What I want to do is to use the avatar plugin. So I'm going to hit action from this action button on the bottom toolbar here. And I'm going to switch to the plugins and widgets, and I'm going to select the avatar generator. If you don't have that, you can just go ahead to search for avatar generator, and you can click on it. So once you do that, with the frame selected, which is where you want to insert your avatar, you can just click on place photo, and it's going to place a random image in that position, which is of course what you're seeing here. I'm going to close this up, and I'm going to reduce the size of this frame to like, let's say 32 pixels. But before I do that, I'm going to hit this constraint proportion icon, and I'm going to change this to 32 pixels. So I'm just going to shove this at the far right corner. So after bringing in our image, you can see that we need to have a consistent spacing on the right and on the left. So the most obvious thing to do is to bring in a layout grid. So I'm going to select this home screen and look for layout grid from our panel here. And you can see it at the bottom. I think in the previous design it was at the top, but here it's like at the bottom. So I'm going to select a layout grid, and of course it's going to be column. So I'm going to select here and change this to column. And for the column, I want a column of 12, and I want a margin of 24. I think 24 is quite a lot, but I'm going to use that for this particular design. So I'm going to close this up, and because we are using a pro screen, I think 24 is actually decent. So usually I use 16 pixel in terms of margin on the left and on the right when I'm using the iPhone 13 mini. But once I'm using the Pro, I think 24 is quite okay. It's quite decent. So I'm going to select this name and I'm going to like move it to the far right. And I'm going to select both the title here and this avatar and hit Shift A to create an auto layout on them and make sure they are aligned center. So I'm going to move it to the top a bit. And from here, the next thing we want to do is to create that card section where we have like your account balance, and then we have the ability to add cash or to cash out. So the first thing we are going to do from here now is to add the title of the card section. But first, I'm going to turn off this layout grid. I don't like designing with it. So whenever we need it, I'm going to turn it on. So I'm just going to turn this off. And then we need to go ahead to start creating our card. So the first thing is going to be the title of the card. I'm going to select this and I'm going to say cash balance. This is obviously too large, so I'm going to select this, like select the text itself and change the size of the text to 14 pixel. Now we are going to have the actual balance next, which is going to be 68.44 for the actual balance, and I'm going to select this and make it bigger. So I'm going to give it like a size of, let's say, 32 pixel. This is way too big. Let's try 24, which is quite decent. So I'm going to add the dollar symbol in front of this, and I'm just going to shove it to the right corner here. So here we have the account title and the value. The next thing I'm going to do here is to add the account and routing option here. Account and routing. So I'm just going to keep this here just like this. I'm going to reduce the font weight to, let's say, regular. I'm going to do the same thing for the cash. I'm going to reduce this to regular. So now once we have this, we want to use auto layout to create our card, obviously, and we are going to start creating auto layout from the most similar items. So first, we have the title and the value here. So I'm going to select the title and select the value and hit Shift A to create an auto layout on it. And then next we have this. So I'm going to select this entire auto layout frame that we just created and hold down Shift and select this also and create an auto layout on them by hitting Shift A. But I want it to be align top, so I'm going to click on align top. Now we have this entire section. The next section I want to create is the add cash and cash out, which is quite easy. What we can do is to hit the text button again and add our text, add cash. And for the add cash, I'll try to create this as a button, so I'm going to hit Shift A to create a button. And I want my left and right padding to be twice the size of the top and bottom padding. And since the top and bottom is 10, I'm going to make this 20 pixel. And I want it to be pill-shaped, so I'm going to come to the radius, which is the corner radius, and increase the corner radius to 100 pixel. Now I want to fill the background with a light gray, so I'm going to turn on the fill and make this F9, F9, F9. So now we have the add cash button. Next one to create is the cash out button. So I'm going to hold down Option or Alt, click and drag, and then change this to cash out. So now we have this. I'm going to select both of them, just like we did for this section at the top. I'm going to select both of this and hit Shift A to create an auto layout on it. Once I have this on auto layout and I have this on auto layout, I'm going to select both of these sections and create an auto layout on both of these. I hope by now you're getting the structure of auto layout, and the whole purpose of this is that by the end of this video you should be able to master the use of auto layout and understand the relationship between elements in an auto layout section. I know by now there is what they call the suggest auto layout feature, but even though you're going to be using that, you also need to really understand how it works, right? So once we have this, what I want to do is to add like a padding around this auto layout frame. So I'm going to come to this padding section, hold down Command and click, and I'm going to add a padding of 32 all around, which is quite a lot. So I'm going to reduce this to 12 pixel. So once we have this, I also want to round up the corners to like 24, but we are not going to see the rounded corners. So we need to do something about it so that we can see what the rounded corners is. So in order to do that, first I'm going to select our home screen, and I'm going to change the background color of our home screen to F9, 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 which is a light shade of gray. And I'm going to select this card section and I'm going to fill it up with white. Here we can see that our status bar is white, but I don't want it to be white. I want it to be transparent. And good enough, the component, we have the ability to turn off the background, and we can see that it's transparent like this. So this is a Boolean property in components. If you want to learn about this, I have a video on Boolean properties in my channel. You can go ahead and learn more about Boolean properties. And you're going to be seeing that a lot when you're making use of the UI kits provided by Figma. So it's really nice you have an idea of that. So once we have our card here, our card is looking a little bit slim, so I'm going to increase the spacing here a little bit more to 32. And then even the spacing at the top and at the bottom, I'm going to increase this to, let's say, 16. So all around 16 pixels, which is quite decent. So let's go ahead and turn off our grid back so that we can see where this card begins and where it ends. And it's not looking so bad. It seems like it's using the exact sizing proportion that we intend it to use. So I'm going to click on our frame and I'm going to turn this off again. So I think this is actually quite decent, but I'm going to reduce the corner radius again to like 16 pixels because it still seems too much. And I want to create a little bit of elevation on this. So I'm going to select this and go to Effects. I'm going to add a drop shadow, and this drop shadow is just going to be 6%, but for the blur, I'm going to make the blur like 40%. So I'm going to close this up, and you can see there's some kind of elevation on this. To create a better visual balance, you can go ahead to reduce the thickness of the dark color for these titles so that what is prioritized is the account balance and your buttons. And for the buttons, we can go ahead to make this a little bit darker. So the whole purpose of this video, like I said, is to help you guys understand auto layout. We are now going to go into components in the next elements we are building, and most importantly, to show you guys the new UI. I really want to get my hands on the new UI, and I'm looking for opportunities for us to get familiar with this new UI. After creating this section, the next thing we are going to do is to create the services section of this fintech solution, which is obviously Cash App, since that is what we are redesigning. But before we go ahead and do that, I'm going to paste in the icons we are going to be using for this, which is these icons here. And the way I got this icon is to simply go to the action section, go to plugins and search for Iconify and click on Iconify. So on clicking on Iconify, you can search for whatever icon you want in this search menu and select from the list of icons, then click on import with this import icon button, and you can start using those icons. It's quite easy. So let's go ahead to start creating the next section. So for the next section, we are going to have savings, right? And for this savings, the next thing we are going to have is like this icon. So I'm going to ungroup all of this by hitting Command Shift and G, or Control Shift and G, depending on if you're using a Mac or a PC. And for savings, I'm definitely going to bring in this dollar icon. I'm going to bring it in here. So once we have this icon, what I want to do is I want to wrap this icon in another frame. So what I'm going to do is to select a frame and click on the artboard. For this frame, I'm going to give it a fill so that we can differentiate it. And for the fill, I'm just going to give it a random gray fill. So I'm also going to reduce its size. I'm going to use twice the size of this. This is currently 24 pixels for the width and height. So for this, I'm going to give it 48. And I'm going to round up the corners to be 100%. So I'm just going to paste this here just like this, and then I'm going to shove this icon to the middle of this particular frame. So once I have this, I'm going to position this at the top, and then next I want to have is like the title and subtitle at the bottom here. So for savings, 0.00, and for the savings I want to use a larger text of 16 pixels, and then I want to make it semi-bold. But then we're also going to have a description text at the bottom here that says save for a go. So I'm going to say save for a go. So now that we have all of this, the next thing we want to do is to start creating an auto layout frame out of all of this. So from here, we are going to start looking at the elements with the closest relationship and creating an auto layout frame out of this. So from here, I'm going to select the text here, which is the value, and then the description. Select both of them and hit Shift A to create an auto layout. Then I'm going to select this icon and select this that we just created and hit Shift A to create an auto layout on them. Then I'm going to select everything and the title. But before I select the title, I want to have like a call to action icon on this title, because this particular card is going to be clickable but I want to have like an action icon. And usually what you do for that is to have like this kind of icon that we have here. So I'm going to select this icon and bring it here. And I'm going to align it with the title of this card. So I'm going to select this. So I'm going to reduce this first. I'm going to reduce the size to, let's say, 20 pixel or 18 pixel. And then I'm going to select the title and hit Shift A to create an auto layout. So once it is aligned, I'm going to select this and then select our previous auto layout element and hit Shift A to create an auto layout on everything. Then I'm going to add like, then I'm going to add spacing around it. So I'm going to select this and add like spacing of 12 pixel all around the card. I'm also going to fill the card, but you can see that this doesn't seem to have a spacing of 12 pixel on the right. So what I'm going to do is to come to the width section and then make this width hug content. You can now see that we can have our spacing on the right, but this doesn't seem like what we want yet, but we're going to gradually get there. So we're going to add a corner radius of, let's say, 24, which is quite too much. So we can do like 8 pixel or 12. Then we can also add like an effect on it, just like the way we did for the top card section. It's going to be 6%. Here it's going to be 20 because it's like a smaller card. And you can do more if you want, but I'm going to be using 20 for this. And then you can see that this is quite decent. So after adding the shadow effects to our card, I want to have two of these cards on the left and on the right. But how do I know the exact size to use for both of them in such a way that it properly contains this section without having to leave this really big space in the middle? What I'm going to do here is to select both of them, both of these duplicates that I created, and hit Shift A. Now, you can see that we are having a margin of 24 on the left and 24 on the right, which leaves us to 48 pixel on both ends. And we are using a total width of 393 for our mobile application. So we are going to remove 48 pixel from 393, which I believe leaves us with 345. So we have 345 to contain our actual content. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this auto layout frame where we hit auto layout on both of these cards, and I'm going to make sure it is a fixed width and it has to be 345. If it's anything less, you can change it yourself. I'll make sure it's 345. So once you've set the width of this to be 345, the next thing you want to do is to select this and then select this. So once you select both of these cards, what you want to do is to make sure that the width section is in fill. You can see here that it is in hug because we tried to make it hug the contents in the card, which is okay. But now we want to achieve something different. So you're going to switch this from hug to fill container. So once you set both of these cards to fill container, depending on what your application is, this particular card might change or they might not change. And the reason why ours is not changing is because we have a fixed spacing of 99 pixel in the middle here. So what we want to do is to change this spacing value. And for this application, we cannot make this spacing more than 24 pixel because we already have 24 pixel on the left and on the right part of the margin. The spacing between these two cards cannot be more than the spacing in this section. So what we are going to do is we're going to use a spacing of like 18 pixel. So I'm going to make this 18 pixel. And you can now see that both cards spans to fill the remaining space and leaves only the 18 pixel in the middle, which is what we are trying to achieve. So this is quite okay for our goal. So I'm just going to leave this card like this. But I think we can work on the height. So I'm going to increase the height a little bit. But before I increase the height, I'm going to make sure that this spacing section in terms of the height is on auto, right? So that everything just spans across and we only have this auto spacing here. So I'm going to increase this card a little bit more. I think this is too much. I'm just going to increase it up till this point. Yes, so you can now see that this particular card is not increasing, which is fine. So before I go ahead to make changes to this card, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this particular container and I'm going to make it a component. So we can come here and click on Create Component button. Before, in the previous UI, the Create Component button was at the top here, but now we can find it at the top right. So once you've created your component, you can hit Command D to duplicate it. But of course, this is a fixed container and everything will feel crumbled like this. So we are going to delete the other card that is not a component. Now we have two components that are properly set up in our designs. So guys, here you can see we have our component and we also have the instance of our component. So the next thing we want to do here is to add the properties, which is our component properties. We want to be able to duplicate this card and also change some of the properties of this card, like the title, like the icon used here, and all sorts of things. So I'm going to select this component, which is the main component itself, and I'm going to bring it out of this artboard. If this particular card spans the entire width, it's okay, and that's because we are using the fill functionality. But because we've taken out this from that particular frame, you can now see that we have the original width needed to properly stack our cards side by side. So we don't have to worry about this filling the card anymore. So I'm going to select this and we can go ahead to start adding our component properties. So starting from the text, I'm going to select the title of this card here and I'm going to come to this text section and add a text property. So here I'm just going to say card title, and I'm going to leave it at this and create property. So here we have a text property on our card title. Here the next thing we want to have is an instance swap. So we want to be able to swap the icons here so that if we switch from, let's say, savings to stock or from savings to Bitcoin, we should be able to put the respective icon here. And in order to do that, like I've taught in my previous videos, everything that has to be here has to be a component. So I'm going to go back to all our selected icons, including this. I'm going to duplicate this back. So we have this here. So I'm going to select every single one of them. I'm going to click on these three dots here, and what I want to do is to create multiple components. So I'm going to click on create multiple components because I want each and every one of them to be an individual component. So I'm going to click on create multiple components, and I'm going to copy this, the first one here, back, and I'm going to come here and paste to replace. So now I've replaced what we have here with an instance of a component, which is the instance of this icon, and we can go ahead to now add an instance swap to this particular position. And in order to add an instance swap to this particular position, I'm going to come here and click on these three dots here, and I'm going to click on create instance swap property. And of course, what we want to use this for is card icon. So we're just going to rename it, and we can go ahead to add our preferred values so that every time we need to swap the components in that card, we don't have to search the entire file on the entire canvas to get our icon. So I'm going to click on this plus menu, and I'm going to go ahead to check the rest of the icons that we have on this artboard. So once I do that, I'm going to create property. So here we've created two component properties, which is the card and the instance swap. For this section, I'm going to create a Boolean property on this section because not all our cards is going to be having this particular section. So in order to do that, we are going to come to this appearance section because that controls the visibility of elements. And I'm going to select this icon here that says create Boolean property. And I'm going to create this Boolean property. Here I'm going to say show, instead of the number, I'm just going to say show value. And by default, it's going to be false because most of those cards don't have it. Only one card do have it. So I'm going to create component. So it's okay for it to look like this. And the next thing I'm going to do is to copy this, select this our frame where we have this, and I'm going to paste this in. So once I do that, you can now see that we have two cards, the instance that we created earlier and this newly pasted instance in this section. So for this second section, I want to call it something else. So for this second card, I want to call it something else. So I'm going to select it and then come to the card title here and change this to Bitcoin. And since it's Bitcoin, I want to also change the icon in this section to Bitcoin. So I'm going to select the card itself again, come to card icon and select this Bitcoin icon. Then for this, I also forgot that we didn't create a text for this, a text variable, but you can also just click here and change your text. There's really no limitations to changing text. And I notice changing of text, it's coming and it's centralized. So we are going to go to our main component, select this, and change this back to align left. So, but to just make everything a little cleaner, I'm going to select this text here, and I'm also going to create a text component to this. I'm going to use create property, and I'm going to say text description. I don't know if that works, but we're just going to name it this, and I'm going to create property. So here, once we click on this card now, we can also change the text description. So, and for the text description for this, I'm just going to paste in 0.70% today, and I think we have this. This first card that has the savings also have the value, so I'm going to check this value icon to have the value. Alright guys, as soon as we have our savings and our Bitcoin card, I'm going to select the entire frame, hold down Alt or Option and create a duplicate. For this duplicate, I'm going to select the first card, and for the first card, I'm going to rename this to stocks. And for the icon, I'm going to select one of these icons, which is this stock icon here. And for the value here, where we have these numbers, we don't have a value for this card. So I'm going to turn this off, and for the description text, I'm just going to paste in a description text, and I think we are good. So for the next card here, I'm also going to change the title to taxes, and then I'm going to change the icon to this like bank icon. Then I'm also going to change the description text. Alright, so we have all our cards, but one thing I notice is we have different positioning of the icons. Here we have this icon, and here we have this icon that is kind of below, which is because we turned off the value in this section, and there's a way to fix that. So I'm going to go back to our main component here, and I'm going to change the show value of this icon back to true by default, so that every item in this list can have it, and we can also turn this back to true. And what I want to do here is to select this value text, right click and frame selection. Once we frame selection, if we go ahead and select this main card component and come to this show value and turn it from true to false, we won't have that distortion again, because we have a frame that is supposed to contain whatever value is supposed to be in this position. So our icon is not going to take up that space. So that is one way to fix an issue like this. So I'm going to go back to this stock, and I'm going to turn this off, so that we have something that is quite consistent across all our cards. I'm also going to reduce the height of this card a little bit more, and then also if there is a spacing between these guys, on which here it is 13, I think I'm going to reduce it to 4, so that there is a little less space between the icon and the description. So I'm going to leave this like this. So after reducing the height of our major components, I don't like the fact that some of our components are not responding, which is this next one. I think I created it before I made a change to this main component. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this description text here, and I'm going to delete this and create a duplicate of this, right? And of course, I'm going to have to change the values back. Here, I'm going to change this to Bitcoin. I'm going to change the icon down to Bitcoin icon, and I'm going to change the description text. I'm going to do the same thing for these taxes. I'm going to copy the description text, and I'm going to delete this, and then I'm going to duplicate this. And here I'm going to change this to taxes. I'm going to change the icon down to this banking icon and paste a new description text. One more thing I want to do is to change this to fixed. So I'm going to come here to the width section and change this to fixed width, which it is already is fixed width. So I'm going to select all the cards in it here and also change them to fixed width. So I'm going to change it to fixed width, and I'm going to remove all the auto layouts on them. It's not necessary to remove all the frames around them, but I want to try out the suggest auto layout feature. So I'm just going to select all of this. It's exciting to try out, so I'm going to select all of this and right click and click on layers. I think it is where can I, more layer option, and suggest auto layout. You can see it suggests, I think, a grid auto layout for us using a spacing of 18 and also 26. So I'm just going to leave this to be 18 and 18 because I want the spacing to be equal, and I think this is okay. This is actually not bad. So you can have this, or you can have 2 rows or 2 columns depending on your approach, but this is fine. So the next thing we are going to be working on is the bottom navigation bar. So I'm going to go ahead to paste in the icons that we are going to be using for this bottom navigation bar, and I'm just going to put them at the top here. And what I also want to do is to select every single one of them and create multiple components, right? So once we have all our icons as a component, I'm going to select every single one of them and create a duplicate of this in the artboard. So while selecting every single one of them, I'm going to hit Shift A to create an auto layout. And for that auto layout, I'm going to like spread it to the far corners of the screen, and I'm going to extend it to the bottom, and I'm going to centralize it just like this. So once I have this, I'm just going to add like a home indicator at the bottom here. So I'm going to go to the asset panel and select our iOS kit and search for home indicator. Right, so I'm just going to drag in this particular one. I'm going to insert it here, and I'm just going to paste it here, just like this. I think I'm going to fill it with white, and I'm also going to fill the navigation with white, and I'm just going to paste it like this, so we have something that looks like this. This is pretty cool. For this title, I think I'm going to increase this text to like 18 or even 24, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, and I think this is decent. So I'm just going to select this. I also notice our navigation bar is not in our frame, so I'm just going to drag it into this frame just like this. Right, I'm also going to move all our components to the side as we might be needing them subsequently. So on selecting this, what we can now do to make this look so much better is to select each of these frames and give it a different feel. Let's look for like color fill that actually works. So guys, this is what our home screen going to look like. So let's open it up in the preview menu. And yeah, this is quite nice. So guys, this is it. We've come to the end of the tutorial. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell if you find any of my videos helpful. And I'm going to see you in my next video. Bye for now.